The Galactic Council chamber wasn't built for comfort. It was built to intimidate. 83 species packed into a spherical arena that rotated slowly in the vacuum of space, transparent walls offering a view of Station Kepler 229's skeletal superstructure and the void beyond. The air tasted recycled. The lighting was too blue, and every seat was designed for a different body type, which meant nobody was comfortable and everyone was equally miserable. Democracy at its finest. Captain Lucia Thorn sat in the back row of the human delegation section, a corner so small it might as well have been labeled "Species We're Barely Tolerating." Her chair was too narrow, her boots stuck to the floor, and her Earth defense jacket, battered and patched from 3 years of field ops, looked embarrassingly crude next to the glowing energy weave robes and bioengineered armor filling the chamber. She didn't care. What she cared about was the 7-foot reptilian currently pontificating at the central podium. Commander Thexol of the Vraxian Empire had 4 arms, chitin plating that could stop a railgun slug, and the kind of voice that made your teeth ache, deep, resonant, and dripping with condescension. He'd been talking for 11 minutes. Lucia had been counting. "Humans," Thexol declared, gesturing with 2 of his 4 hands, while the other 2 rested on the podium like he owned it. "Are weak," the chamber murmured, not in disagreement, in agreement. Lucia's jaw tightened. "Fragile," Thexol continued. "Their bones break under forces that would barely inconvenience a juvenile Vraxian. Their skin tears. Their organs fail in temperatures we consider mild. They require constant environmental regulation, pressurized habitats, temperature control, absurd quantities of water." A few species chuckled. The Chrylithians clicked their mandibles in amusement. Even the arbitrator, a floating, translucent jellyfish thing named Kel, bobbed in what might have been a nod. Thexol warmed to his theme. "Their military record is unimpressive. No major victories, no technological breakthroughs, just chaos, improvisation, and, what is the human word, winging it." More laughter. Lucia didn't move. She sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, face unreadable. But inside, something cold and sharp was waking up. Thexol turned slightly, his reptilian eyes sweeping the chamber. "They have been part of this council for 6 years. 6. In that time, they have contributed nothing but logistical problems and cultural friction. I propose we exclude them from all military operations moving forward. They are a liability we cannot afford." The chamber erupted in discussion. Species leaned toward each other, murmuring, debating. The Vraxian delegation looked smug. The human section, all 5 of them, looked like they'd swallowed glass. Lieutenant Ramirez, sitting beside Lucia, leaned over. "Captain, maybe we should—" "Not yet," Lucia said quietly. "He just called us. Useless." "I know." In front of 83 species. "I noticed." Ramirez stared at her. "You're going to do something stupid, aren't you?" Lucia stood. The chamber went silent. Not gradually, instantly, like someone had hit a mute button. 83 species turned to look at the human standing in the back row. Some curious, some annoyed. A few, those who'd actually read Earth's file, looked worried. Lucia didn't rush. She walked down the aisle toward the center floor, her boots echoing in the sudden quiet. She moved like someone who'd done this before. Calm, deliberate, dangerous. Thexol watched her approach, his mandibles twitching in what might have been amusement. "Captain Thorn, do you have something to add?" Lucia stopped in the center of the chamber, directly beneath the arbitrator's floating form. She looked up at Thexol. Then she smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "You want a demonstration, Commander?" Thexol blinked, a slow, reptilian motion. "A demonstration of what?" "Human fragility." "A combat trial," Lucia said simply. "Your species versus mine. Winner takes the floor." The chamber exploded. Species started shouting in 17 different languages. Kel's gelatinous body pulsed with light as it tried to restore order. The Vraxian delegation looked like someone had just insulted their ancestors, which, technically, Lucia had.
Thexal, however, didn't look insulted. He looked delighted. "You wish to challenge me?" His voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Personally?" "Unless you'd rather keep talking," Lucia said. "I can wait." The chamber went quiet again. This time it was the kind of silence that happens right before something explodes. Thexal's mandibles spread wide, a Vraxian grin. "Very well, Captain. I accept. It will be brief." Lucia's smile widened. "Oh, I'm counting on it." Kel finally managed to restore order, its translucent body glowing with authority. "This is highly irregular. Combat trials require council approval." "Accord Rule 63, Lucia said without looking up. "Any member species may challenge a proposal through non-lethal combat if they believe they've been unjustly maligned. I believe I've been unjustly maligned." Kel hesitated. "Rule 63 has not been invoked in 400 years. "Then we're overdue." Thexal slammed one of his fists on the podium. "The human speaks correctly. I accept the terms. 1 hour. The station's combat arena. Non-lethal rules." Kel pulsed with uncertainty. "Very well. The trial is sanctioned. 1 hour." Lucia turned and walked back up the aisle. The entire chamber watched her go. Ramirez was waiting at the entrance, along with the rest of the human delegation. Dr. Kwan, Ensign Okafor, and Sergeant Malik. They all looked like they'd aged 5 years in 5 minutes. Ramirez fell into step beside her. "Captain, you know Vraxians have chitin plating that can stop plasma rounds, right?" "Yep." "And 4 arms?" "Yep." "And you're going in with what, exactly?" Lucia patted the sheathed blade on her hip. It was a long sword, matte black, molecular edge, completely illegal in 14 systems. Ramirez stopped walking. "I'm sorry, what?" "A sword. You're bringing a sword to fight a species that invented plasma weaponry 3,000 years ago. Swords don't run out of ammo." Ramirez looked at Kwan. Kwan looked at Malik. Malik looked at Okafor. Okafor looked back at Ramirez. Nobody said anything. They reached the human quarters 15 minutes later, a cramped section of the station that smelled like engine grease and recycled air. Lucia pulled her sword from its case and laid it on the table. The blade gleamed under the overhead lights, sharp enough to split molecules. Dr. Kwan was already prepping a trauma kit. "You're going to get yourself killed." "Probably not." "That's not reassuring." Lucia strapped on light armor, reinforced padding across her chest, shoulders, and thighs. Compared to Vraxian exoplating, she looked like she was heading to a gym. Sergeant Malik handed her a small injector. "Adrenaline booster, just in case." Lucia pocketed it. "I won't need it." "You will if he hits you." "Then I won't let him hit me." Okafor was placing bets on a handheld display, talking to other humans scattered across the station. "Odds are 60-1 against you, Captain. Want me to put credits down?" "How much do we have?" "Not enough to matter," Lucia grinned. "Bet it all." Ramirez leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "What's the plan, Captain?" Lucia picked up her sword, tested its weight, and slid it into the sheath on her back. "Hit him until he stops moving." "That's not a plan." "It's my plan." She walked toward the door. The others followed. Okafor muttered under his breath, "I give her 30 seconds. Malik shook his head. 2 minutes, and a promotion. Kwan said nothing, just checked the trauma kit one more time. Lucia paused at the door, glanced back at her crew and said, "Relax, it's mostly under control." Then she walked out. Behind her, Ramirez groaned, "We're all going to die." But nobody disagreed, and nobody stopped her. The combat arena was a coliseum for the space age, a circular platform 50 meters wide, suspended in a transparent dome that looked out into the void. No atmosphere beyond the dome, no gravity dampeners, just raw, unfiltered combat under the gaze of every species on the station. The stands were packed. Every delegate, crew member, and station worker who could get clearance had crammed themselves into the observation decks. The air buzzed with anticipation and the distinct smell of alien biology under stress. This was entertainment. This was history. This was a human about to get crushed by a Vraxian war hero, and nobody wanted to miss it. Lucia walked onto the platform from the west gate, alone, no entourage, no fanfare. Just her sword, and an expression that suggested she'd rather be anywhere else but had committed to the bit. The crowd went silent. Then, Thexal entered from the east gate. He came with an entourage, 4 Vraxian honor guards in full ceremonial armor, carrying plasma pikes that hummed with barely contained energy. Thexal himself wore combat plating that gleamed under the arena lights, each piece etched with victory markings from campaigns Lucia couldn't even pronounce. He had 4 arms. Each one was thicker than her torso. He had chitin plating that could stop a missile. He had 300 years of combat experience. Lucia had a sword and spite. The odds did not look good. Kel floated above the arena, its translucent body pulsing with authority. This trial will proceed under Accord Rule 58, non-lethal combat until surrender or incapacitation. Use of personal weapons is permitted. Lethal force is prohibited. Combatants, acknowledge. Thexal slammed his 4 fists together in sequence, a Vraxian salute. Acknowledged. Lucia rolled her shoulders. Let's go. Kel hesitated, as if hoping someone would stop this madness. Nobody did. Begin. The bell rang. Thexal charged immediately, not a measured advance, not a tactical approach, just a straight-line sprint that closed 30 meters in 3 seconds, his armored bulk moving faster than something that size had any right to move. Lucia didn't move. She stood perfectly still, sword held low, eyes locked on the Vraxian freight train bearing down on her. The crowd collectively held its breath. At the last possible second, when Thexal's fist was already swinging toward her head, Lucia stepped left. Not a dodge, a sidestep, casual, almost lazy. Thexal's fist missed by inches, Lucia's sword didn't. The molecular blade slashed across the joint in his lower right leg, right where the armor plating met the flexible underlayer. Sparks flew, chitin cracked. Thexal stumbled. Not much, just a half step, but enough. The crowd gasped. Thexal spun, faster than Lucia expected, and swung 2 fists in a wide horizontal arc, meant to catch her regardless of which way she moved. Lucia dropped flat to the ground. The fists passed over her head with a sound like a cannon shot. She rolled forward, came up inside his guard, and drove her elbow into the seam of his chest plating. Thexal grunted, a sound of genuine surprise. Lucia danced back, sword raised, and grinned. Still think I'm fragile? Thexal's mandibles spread wide. Not amusement anymore. Anger. He activated his wrist-mounted plasma caster. The weapon charged with a high-pitched whine, energy coalescing into a bolt of superheated plasma that could punch through starship hull plating. Lucia saw the glow and sprinted left. The plasma bolt scorched the arena floor where she'd been standing, leaving a crater that glowed orange. In the human observation box, Ramirez leaned forward. Oh, he's cheating. Malik checked his datapad. Accord Rule 58 allows personal equipment. Technically legal. Ramirez tapped his wristcom. Captain, you've got clearance for Protocol Sigma. Lucia's voice crackled back through the comm, breathless but steady. Confirmed! She pulled the adrenaline injector from her belt and jammed it into her thigh without breaking stride. The effect was immediate. Her pupils dilated. Her heart rate spiked. The world sharpened into crystal clarity. Every movement, every sound, every angle of attack suddenly visible in perfect detail. Thexal fired again. Lucia didn't dodge this time. She leaped, actually leaped, vaulting over the plasma bolt with a grace that shouldn't have been possible for a human in light armor. She tucked into a roll midair, landed inside his guard, and slashed across his lower left arm. The molecular blade bit deep. Sparks flew. Wiring sparked. The arm went limp, hanging useless at his side. Thexal roared, a sound that shook the arena's transparent dome, and backhanded her with his upper right arm. Lucia flew, 6 feet through the air, hit the ground hard, and rolled 3 times before skidding to a stop. Blood dripped from her lip. She spat it onto the arena floor. Good hit, she said. Then she charged. Thexol tried to grab her with his 3 remaining arms, a coordinated attack that should have pinned her like an insect. Lucia didn't fight the grab, she used it. As his hands closed around her, she planted her boot on his chest and kicked off, flipping backward over his head. Her sword dragged across his backplating as she went, screeching like a dying star. He spun. She was already behind him. She swept his injured leg. Thexol dropped to one knee. The crowd was on its feet. Species were screaming in languages Lucia didn't understand. The human section was losing its collective mind. Lucia didn't hesitate. She vaulted onto Thexol's back, wrapped her legs around his torso, and pressed the molecular blade against the exposed joint at his neck, the one weak point in his armor. "Yield," she said quietly. Thexol tried to throw her off. She tightened her grip, the blade biting just enough to draw a thin line of purple blood. "Yield!" His breathing was ragged. His honor guards were halfway to the arena floor, plasma pikes raised. Kel's voice boomed across the arena. "Commander Thexol, do you yield?" Silence. The entire station seemed to hold its breath. Then, barely audible, "I yield." Lucia released him immediately, dropped to the ground, and stepped back. Thexol stayed on his knees, staring at the floor. The arena erupted. Half the crowd was cheering. The other half looked like they'd just watched reality break in half. The human section was a cacophony of screaming, laughing, and what might have been crying. Lucia sheathed her sword, walked past Thexol, and paused. She leaned down, just close enough for him to hear, and said, "Still think we're weak?" She didn't wait for an answer. She walked toward the west gate, bleeding, limping slightly and grinning like she'd just won the lottery. Behind her, Thexol finally stood. His honor guards rushed to support him, but he waved them off. He watched Lucia leave, his 4 eyes tracking her every step. Then he did something nobody expected. He inclined his head, a Vraxian bow, a gesture of respect reserved for equals. Lucia didn't see it. She was already gone. But Kel saw it, and Kel's translucent body pulsed with something that might have been alarm. In the human quarters, Dr. Kwan had the trauma kit ready before Lucia even made it through the door. 3 cracked ribs, Kwan said, running a scanner over her torso. Dislocated shoulder. Concussion. You're an idiot. But I won. That doesn't make you less of an idiot. Malik raised a glass of contraband whiskey. To Captain Thorn, the first human to make a Vraxian cry in public. They drank. Lucia winced but grinned. Then Ramirez's comm beeped. His face went serious. "Captain," he said slowly, "we've got a problem." Lucia looked up. "Define problem." Ramirez pulled up a holographic display. A message hovered in the air, encrypted and anonymous. It read, "You humiliated the wrong species. Leave Kepler 229 in the next 6 hours, or don't leave at all." Malik stared at the message. "Well, that's ominous." Lucia stood, wincing through the pain. "Trace it." "Already tried. Whoever sent it knows their way around station security." Okafor looked nervous. "So, assassination threat. Fun. What do we do?" Lucia's grin faded. Her voice went cold. "We don't leave." Lucia didn't believe in running from threats. She believed in finding whoever made the threat and having a very direct conversation about it. Which is why, 2 hours after receiving an anonymous death threat, she was walking through the lower decks of station Kepler 229 with Ramirez and Malik, heading toward the kind of neighborhood where station security didn't patrol and questions didn't get asked. The lower decks were a maze of maintenance corridors, black market shops and establishments that catered to species whose hobbies weren't exactly legal. The air smelled like ozone, coolant, and something organic that Lucia didn't want to identify. Flickering lights cast shadows that moved in ways that made her hand drift toward her sword. "Remind me why we're doing this instead of letting station security handle it?" Ramirez muttered, his sidearm drawn but held low. "Because station security is either compromised or incompetent," Lucia said, "and I'm not feeling patient enough to figure out which." Malik scanned the corridor with a handheld detector. "Contact is 3 sections ahead. Zix's shop. Still there." Good. They turned a corner and nearly walked into a Krillithian arms dealer, having an argument with what looked like a sentient plant. Both stopped mid-sentence to stare at the humans. Lucia kept walking. They wisely decided not to interfere. Zix's shop was wedged between a narcotics dealer and a body modification clinic. The sign above the door flickered in 3 languages, none of them encouraging. Lucia pushed through the door without knocking. Inside, the shop was crammed floor to ceiling with data storage devices, holo displays, and enough illegal surveillance equipment to monitor half the station. Behind the counter sat Zix, a 4-eyed Krillithian insectoid whose mandibles clicked rhythmically as they worked on disassembling some piece of tech. Zix looked up. All 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Captain Thorn," the voice was like gravel being chewed. "I heard about your little performance. Impressive. Who sent the threat, Zix?" Zix's mandibles stopped clicking. "Straight to business. I appreciate that, but information costs." Malik stepped forward and placed a data chip on the counter. "Encrypted files from a derelict ship we salvaged last month. Pre-contact Earth military tech. Should be worth something to the right buyer." Zix's eyes gleamed, all 4 of them. One of their segmented arms reached out and snatched the chip with disturbing speed. They plugged it into a reader, scanned the contents, and made a sound that might have been pleasure. "Now we're talking." Zix leaned forward, lowering their voice. "The threat didn't come from the Vraxians." "Then who?" "The Shikari Consortium." Lucia exchanged glances with Ramirez. "Never heard of them." "That's the point." Zix's mandibles clicked faster. "They're not a species. They're an organization. Investors, power brokers. They bet on outcomes, wars, elections, council votes, combat trials. They had significant resources riding on you losing." Ramirez frowned. "How much?" "Enough to buy a small moon, maybe a large one." Malik whistled low. "And now they're angry." "Angry is an understatement." Zix pulled up a holographic display showing financial transactions that made Lucia's head hurt. Humans were supposed to be the joke species. Weak. Fragile. Easy to predict. You weren't supposed to win. Your victory cost them dearly, not just credits, reputation, credibility. They don't like losing. Lucia stared at the transactions, millions of credits flowing through shell corporations, dummy accounts, intermediaries she couldn't even pronounce. "So they want me dead to save face. They want you dead to send a message that humans can't disrupt their operations." Too late for that. Zix's eyes narrowed. "Captain, you don't understand. The consortium doesn't make empty threats. If they sent that message, they've already deployed assets. You should leave. Now." Lucia turned toward the door. "Thanks for the intel, Zix." "That's it? You're not leaving?" "Nope." "You're insane." Lucia paused at the door and looked back. "Probably. But I'm insane with a sword." They left Zix staring after them, mandibles clicking in what might have been disbelief or admiration. The corridor outside was darker than Lucia remembered. Her instincts screamed half a second before the lights cut out completely. "Move!" she shouted. Plasma fire erupted from the corridor ahead, turning the darkness into a strobing nightmare of superheated bolts and vaporized metal. Malik grabbed Lucia's shoulder and yanked her behind a bulkhead, as the wall where she'd been standing simply ceased to exist. Ramirez returned fire with his sidearm, the muzzle flash illuminating his face in sharp bursts. "Shikari? Safe bet." Lucia drew her sword. The molecular blade gleamed in the plasma fire's glow. Ramirez stared. "You brought the sword to a black market run?" "I always bring the sword." 4 figures advanced through the smoke, armored in sleek black combat suits with no insignia, no identification, no mercy. Professional killers, the kind you hire when you want the job done right. They split into 2 pairs, one pair advancing head-on, the other flanking through a side corridor. Lucia didn't wait for them to get organized. She charged. The closest attacker raised a plasma rifle. Lucia slid under the shot. A baseball slide that would have made her high school coach proud came up inside his reach and drove the sword through the gap between his helmet and chest plate. He made a sound. Then he stopped making sounds. Malik dealt with the second attacker using a grenade Lucia didn't know he'd brought. Compact, illegal, extremely effective. The explosion rocked the corridor. Alarms started blaring. Emergency lighting flickered on. The remaining two attackers retreated. Lucia didn't let them. She sprinted after them, sword dripping, adrenaline singing in her veins. Behind her, Ramirez was shouting something, but she couldn't hear it over the blood pounding in her ears. She caught the third attacker at a corridor junction. He spun, raising his weapon. She was faster. Her sword slashed across his rifle, cutting it in half. He dropped the ruined weapon and went for a sidearm. Lucia didn't give him the chance. She slammed him against the wall, pressing the blade against his throat. "Who sent you?" The attacker laughed. A distorted mechanical sound filtered through his helmet's voice modulator. "You've already lost. The consortium owns the council. You embarrassed them, made them look weak. They'll make an example of you, of all humans. You can't fight what you can't see. You can't win against—" He bit down on something. His body convulsed. Foam bubbled from the gaps in his helmet. Poison capsule, dead in seconds. Lucia stepped back, breathing hard. Damn it! The fourth attacker was gone. Vanished into the station's labyrinth. Ramirez and Malik caught up, both breathing hard. "Captain," Ramirez said carefully, "we need to leave. Now. If the consortium is this committed—" "We're not leaving," Lucia said. "We're going to the council." "What?" "They tried to kill me 3 times in 2 hours. That's not going to stop unless I make it stop." She wiped her blade clean and sheathed it. "And I'm going to make it stop in front of every species on this station." Malik looked at the dead assassin. "That's insane." "You keep saying that." "Because it keeps being true." Lucia started walking toward the upper decks. "Then don't follow me." They followed. Her, anyway. 20 minutes later, Lucia stormed into the Galactic Council chamber mid-session. She was bleeding from a dozen cuts. Her armor was scorched. Her sword was still drawn. The entire chamber went silent. Kel's translucent body pulsed with alarm. "Captain Thorn, you cannot— The Shikari Consortium just tried to kill me," Lucia interrupted. Her voice echoed in the sudden silence. 3 times in 2 hours. "Want to explain why?" The chamber erupted. Species started shouting. Delegates stood. Guards moved toward Lucia, then stopped when Malik and Ramirez flanked her, weapons drawn. Thexal, sitting in the Vraxian delegation section, stood slowly. "This is absurd. The Shikari are investors, not assassins." "Funny." Lucia threw a data chip onto the chamber floor. It clattered in the silence. "The assassins disagree." Kel floated down and examined the chip with some kind of scanning appendage. The silence stretched. Then a voice from the back of the chamber. "Captain Thorn speaks truth." Everyone turned. Ambassador Velthar, a Crinean elder who looked like a cross between a monk and a tree, stood slowly. Their voice was ancient, tired, and absolutely certain. "The Shikari have corrupted our processes. I have suspected for years but lacked proof." Kel's body pulsed rapidly. This is a grave accusation." "It's also true," Lucia said. "They bet against humanity. We won. They lost credits, lost reputation, and now they want me dead to save face." She gestured around the chamber. "How many of you have made decisions based on their financial advice? How many votes have been influenced by their economic projections? How many wars started because they needed a profitable outcome?" Silence. Then the holographic projectors at the center of the chamber activated without authorization. A figure appeared, cloaked in shadows, voice distorted beyond recognition. "Captain Thorn, you are persistent." Lucia turned to face the projection. "And you're a coward. Show your face." The figure laughed. "The consortium does not need faces. We are everywhere. We control economies, elections, wars. Your little victory was amusing but ultimately irrelevant." Irrelevant. You sent 4 assassins. A miscalculation. You should have died in the arena. Commander Thexal should have crushed you, but humans are... The figure paused. Unpredictable. Thexal's mandibles spread wide in fury. You paid me to lose? No, Commander, we paid you to win. Heavily, you failed. That failure cost us dearly. The chamber exploded in outrage. The projection continued, unfazed. But no matter. The Council will vote to expel humanity tomorrow. We've already ensured the outcome. Lucia smiled. It was the same smile she'd worn before challenging Thexal. Try it. See what happens. The figure's tone shifted, amused, dangerous. You truly believe you can fight the consortium? I fought Thexal, Lucia said. I'll fight you too. The projection cut out. The chamber
descended into chaos. The vote was scheduled for the next cycle, 12 hours. That's all the time humanity had left in the Galactic Council. Lucia spent those 12 hours doing exactly what she always did when the odds were impossible. She prepared, she planned, and she refused to accept defeat. The council chamber filled slowly. Every species sent their full delegation this time. This wasn't just a vote, it was a spectacle. The execution of humanity's galactic ambitions, broadcast across 83 worlds. Lucia sat in the human section wearing a clean uniform. Her sword was sheathed but visible. Her crew flanked her, Ramirez, Kwan, Malik, and Okafor, all wearing their best and their worst expectations. Kel floated to the center. We convened to vote on Resolution 839, the expulsion of humanity from Council membership and military cooperation agreements. Species will vote in alphabetical order. The voting began. The Arconian Collective, expel. The Benthic Assembly, expel. The Corvaxian Unity, expel. One after another, a drumbeat of rejection. Lucia watched the tally climb. Ramirez kept his eyes forward. Malik's jaw was clenched so tight it might crack. 40 votes, 50, 60. They needed 28 votes to stay. They had 6. Then came the Vraxian Empire. Thexal stood slowly. His armor was repaired, but the scorch marks from Lucia's blade were still visible. Kept deliberately, she realized. A reminder. The Vraxian Empire, he said, his voice filling the chamber, votes to retain humanity. The chamber gasped. Thexal turned to look directly at Lucia. Captain Thorn defeated me honorably. She exposed corruption within our very chambers. She risked her life 3 times to bring truth to light. He paused. Humans are not weak. They are dangerous, reckless, infuriating. They break every rule we hold sacred and somehow make it work. His mandibles spread. But they are not weak, and I will not vote to expel a species that saved my honor when they had every reason to let me fall. He sat. The chamber erupted in whispers. Ambassador Velthar stood next. The Crinean Protectorate votes to retain humanity. The consortium's corruption runs deep. We cannot punish those who exposed it. Another vote, then another. The tide was turning, but it was close. Too close. The final tally, 41 to expel, 42 to retain. Humanity stayed, by 1 vote. Kel's body pulsed with what might have been relief. The motion fails. Humanity retains council status. Lucia exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours, but she didn't celebrate. Not yet. The session ended. Species filed out, murmuring, arguing, already forming new alliances and plotting new strategies. Politics as usual. Lucia waited until the chamber was nearly empty, then stood and walked toward the Vraxian delegation. Thexal was alone, his honor guards dismissed. Commander, Lucia said. He turned. Captain. You didn't have to do that. No, his mandibles twitched. But you made me look foolish in front of the entire galaxy. The least I could do was return the favor to those who tried to make me a puppet. So we're even? No. Thexal's 4 eyes locked onto hers. I owe you a debt. That is profoundly uncomfortable for a Vraxian, but it is also truth.
Lucia smiled. I'll try not to abuse it. Please do. It would make repaying it much simpler. He walked away, his footsteps echoing in the empty chamber. Lucia rejoined her crew at the exit. They were grinning like idiots. Malik raised an imaginary glass. To not getting kicked out of space. I'll drink to that, Okafor said, once we're back on a ship with actual alcohol. Ramirez looked at Lucia. So what now, Captain? We just exposed a shadow organization that controls half the galaxy. They're not going to forget this. Lucia started walking toward the docking bay. No, they won't. So what's the plan? We figure out how to dismantle them. Ramirez stopped walking. That's insane. You keep saying that, because it keeps being true. Lucia glanced back, grinning. Then don't follow me. They followed her anyway. Behind them, Kel watched from a viewing port high above the chamber. The arbitrator's translucent body pulsed slowly, thoughtfully. An aide, a small, crystalline being, floated up beside them. The humans survived. Yes. The consortium will retaliate. Yes. Should we intervene? Kel was silent for a long moment. No. No. The humans have proven something today, something we had forgotten. Kel's body pulsed brighter. They are not strong because they cannot be broken. They are strong because they refuse to stay broken. The aide considered this. That is terrifying. Yes. What do we do? Kel turned away from the viewport. We watch, we document, and we pray to whatever gods we believe in that humanity decides we are allies rather than obstacles. The aide paused. Do you believe they will? I have no idea, and that perhaps is the most frightening thing of all. Down in the docking bay, Lucia and her crew boarded their transport, a battered courier ship that had seen better decades. The engines fired with a whine that suggested they might explode at any moment. They didn't. As the ship pulled away from Kepler 229, Lucia stood at the viewport, watching the station shrink into the distance. Malik came up beside her. Think they'll come after us? Absolutely. And we're ready for that? Lucia smiled, the same smile she'd worn before challenging Thexol, before storming the council, before deciding that one human with a sword could change everything. We're human, Malik. We're never ready. We just make it work anyway. Behind them, in the command center of a ship that didn't officially exist, the shadowy figure from the hologram watched Lucia's transport disappear into the void. An aide appeared. Should we pursue? The figure was silent. Then, quietly, no. Sir? Let them go, for now. The figure leaned back. We bet against humanity once. We lost. We will not make that mistake again. What will we do? The figure smiled, a terrible smile that no one saw. We adapt. We evolve. And we ensure that the next time we face them, the outcome is certain. And if it isn't? The figure said nothing, because for the first time in centuries the Shikari Consortium didn't have an answer, and somewhere in the void between stars, Captain Lucia Thorn and her crew flew toward an uncertain future, with nothing but a battered ship, illegal weapons, and the absolute certainty that whatever came next, they would face it the only way humans knew how. Together, reckless, unbreakable, and just stupid enough to win.